I'm the CEO of MindStudio. Prior to that, I spent 4 years at Google, running product on 3 machine learning teams. Prior to that, I was the Chief Technology Officer of MySpace Music, for any of those that remember MySpace. And prior to that, I built 2 other venture-backed companies. One was a major competitor to YouTube called VO Networks, raised $70 million there. Prior to that, I built a cybersecurity company called Iconic Systems, raised $34 million there. And then in the mid-90s, 95 to 99, I built the web team at this big Japanese company called Fujitsu. So these days, I describe myself as an old nerd. And so I'm super excited to chat with you. So MindStudio came out of alpha, early beta in September and has grown quite rapidly. We now have over 34,000 AIs that have been built and deployed in various types of organizations, giant enterprises, government agencies, thousands of SMBs, solopreneurs using it. And 86% of our growth is organic, and all of it is self-service. So we're an enterprise company that has 0 salespeople. And people show up, go to our website, watch some YouTube tutorials, start building these AIs, and figure out how to do them. And so I'm going to share with you some of these things that we're learning from this critical mass of different types of organizations that are already using MindStudio to do basically digital transformation in their enterprises. And so these are sort of common patterns that we see of how enterprises go about sort of discovering AI and then sort of evolving as they're doing this. And this evolution is happening very rapidly. I mean, you all came to this conference, so you know that even if all you're doing is spending all day long watching the evolution, no one can really keep up with it. And in enterprises, there's a tremendous amount of pressure that they're feeling kind of from all sides of you better get AI right and better get it right now, otherwise you're dead. So it feels like an existential crisis, and you get just sort of tremendous amount of exuberance for AI that, again, that's driving both the evolution of all of these technologies and a lot of money pouring in, and obviously a lot of these enterprises showing up. And then on the other side, employees inside of enterprises are all freaking out that AI is going to, sort of replace them. And so you get sort of this mismatch of incentives. The enterprise wants productivity and to be competitive. The employees are freaking out that the enterprise is going to implement AI and they're going to be out of a job. And so, as these sort of pressures mount, enterprises tend to start down the path of figuring out how they're going to leverage AI. And the first place they tend to come to is oh, there's this ChatGPT thing or any of these other large language models. Let's just arm all of our employees with ChatGPT. And look, it's amazing. You can just type some commands to it, and it spits out work. Check. All of a sudden, productivity. And then we got to teach them how to use this. And so we can teach them this concept of prompt engineering. Right? And so you see enterprises holding classes and buying these long lists of prompts from other providers and sort of copying and pasting these prompts in their daily work as these employees sort of struggle to get productivity. And of course, managers are figuring out we're not really getting sort of this promise of productivity, this crazy productivity that AI was supposed to do. And so why? Again, once they start sort of observing it, they start to realize our employees are still doing work, but the work they're doing now is sort of wrangling AI to try to do the work for them. And they could have sort of done it themselves, but now they're spending their time prompt engineering and doing this. And by the way, the output seems not to be as good as when the employees were doing the work themselves. So this is a real problem. And then, they start blaming the model providers. We chose the wrong model, so maybe we, not using OpenAI, let's go and sort of go through a process of figuring out what model to use. And that's scary, and they sort of get stuck in analysis paralysis there. There are so many models. It's constantly changing. Last week OpenAI was the winner. Now Anthropic is the winner. Tomorrow somebody else is the winner. Inflection doesn't even exist anymore, right? It looks like Microsoft pulled all the people out of that. So these are all sort of problems of engaging in this kind of analysis of like, what should we standardize on? And then, of course, everybody's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing that at all. Maybe we should just sort of train our own models. And then they're like, okay, what are we supposed to do with that? We got to go find data scientists. We got to figure out how to procure our H100s and like all of this stuff. Some enterprises, when, again, they've sort of gone through the pains of arming their employees with direct access to models, oftentimes figure out that maybe we should look at sort of these professional organizations that are these like vertical SaaS providers that have figured this stuff out. And maybe we just sort of give our employees these new tools that have been built specifically to sort of abstract the models and make them do the things that we want our employees to be able to do better. Popular ones, of course, are things like Jasper, Copywriter, et cetera. And then it's like, what else should we do? So these are like for writing. What about like for graphics or all of these other things? And then they get into this world of, oh, wow, it looks like I've got like, I need to choose from a bunch of vendors for sales and a bunch of other vendors for marketing and ops. And then you start to figure out, well, like, how do we train all of our employees to do this? Like, how do we manage all of these systems? Like, how many of these things do we need? And so these, again, more analysis paralysis in the enterprise. And then after all of that, they tend to discover MindStudio. And as I mentioned, over 86% of our growth is organic. They typically find us because they see somebody talking about us on social media, or they stumbled across some YouTuber doing a tutorial about how to use MindStudio to build things, and they show up to our website and they start learning. And we've got this Learn section. They watch some tutorials, they look at some examples, and all of a sudden they start to realize that they're now seeing the world in sort of a very different way than they were seeing it, just moments before, where it seemed like all you need to do is give employees access to models, or sort of figure out how to use these vertical SaaS services. Now you start to say, well, the right way perhaps to look at it is like to look at my organization and the way it operates, sort of through this new lens. And again, once you understand how MindStudio works, everything sort of becomes clear. And you start to realize that you can build your own custom business applications that leverage AI. We call them AI-powered applications. And you can build them yourself extraordinarily rapidly, like in 15 minutes to maybe a couple of hours, for really, really sophisticated business applications that are built to fit your organization like a glove. So that's huge. You also realize that you never needed to choose between Anthropic or OpenAI or any of these things. That was a fool's errand. You should be able to use any or all of these models because, again, everything is constantly changing. And so you need to be model agnostic. And most AIs that are built with MindStudio now actually leverage multiple models from multiple vendors, from multiple model providers inside of individual AIs. So they might start a workflow. You can build these like multi-step workflows and collect some information, for example, from your business users as part of doing this workflow. And then you might take that information and merge it with some data you have from the enterprise. And then you might call one model to take all of this information, sort of extract some salient points. And that model that you want to call might be optimized for speed and low cost because it's pretty easy to be able to like analyze a bunch of data now and pull out some salient points. You might then bring that back and route it through more process and do some more work on it, and then call sort of a slower and maybe more expensive model to be able to then take all of that information and do some writing or do some content generation. So this ability to use any AI or many AIs is extremely important. The other thing you realize is that, again, as you look at your workflows, as you look at your business processes through this new lens, you start to realize these things we've been doing manually, we can actually just automate them. And we don't have to do them manually anymore. So that's sort of like the first step, typically, of this digital transformation that we see enterprises doing once they learn to use MindStudio, is to say, like, we can automate this and we can automate that, and we don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. And then, for the things that you can't automate, that you still need people to do, again, through this new lens, you start to realize that we can take these various job functions and create custom assistants for them. So again, instead of giving people just access to go talk to ChatGPT and it'll help you figure out, give them a custom-built assistant, a conversational agent, that's built specifically for their job function, that's trained on the data that your company has and on sort of the sensitivities of the company and sort of all these other things. And now employees become more productive because they've got these agents, these assistants that have been built for them specifically to do their job in this new workflow that you're designing. The other thing, of course, that's super important in enterprises is to be able to take all of these things and integrate them into your existing tech stack. And so that becomes a critical part of all that. And again, you realize that that's actually very straightforward to do. And so you do that, and then you sort of have the big realization as like, oh, we don't have to go and sort of retrain all our employees to be prompt engineers. As you guys know, they never learned Google search operators. So it's crazy to believe that we're going to train regular people to be prompt engineers. We should have known that all along. And so you get sort of like this duh moment. And again, we get a lot of people that reach out to us that sort of express this, like, oh, once I realized that it was like, duh, now this totally makes sense to me, and I'm not scared of AI anymore. So MindStudio is a horizontal platform that has sort of a number of components, and those two top layers that you see there. One, it sits on top of all of your enterprise data. Obviously, data is very important in really being able to leverage AI to get work done. And so you can connect to any of your data sources and ingest them and have them be kept fresh and used as part of the operations of this new AI-enabled enterprise. As I mentioned, you can use any model you want. Out of the box, we support OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, Mistral. You can connect to any open source model. A lot of enterprises, larger ones especially, have taken open source models, have fine-tuned them, are running models on-premise or in their own private clouds. So you can connect to those, and you can connect to any enterprise application you use via APIs. And then on top of that, MindStudio has a really powerful no-code builder that anyone can learn to use, just, again, typically by watching 1 or 2 YouTube tutorials. We have an 18-minute tutorial that will get you running, and you'll feel like, oh, wow, I can build AI applications. And then we have a 2-hour recorded webinar, or you can attend our weekly live webinars. And in 2 hours, really, really sort of become a master of it. And then we also have an 8-hour, it's typically held on Saturdays, certification course. And so there's a lot of people now that are getting certified in being MindStudio AI developers, because again, there's a lot of need from enterprises, and some of those enterprises are now showing up and asking us if we can recommend people that can help them get up to speed faster and help them do the work. So we do that too. So lots of education to be able to do that. This no-code builder basically allows you to create these multi-step workflows. You can create one or many. And the AIs you can create sort of come in 2 flavors. One is they have, they're meant for humans to drive them. So they're just like these web applications that have screens and they have input and output, and they've got forms. And so they're meant for employees to use them and interact with them. And another flavor are these headless AIs that have no human interfaces. They are driven programmatically by other services, calling them via API. A lot of people tend to use things like Zapier or Make.com to be able to create triggers for various things and then call these custom AIs that they've created with MindStudio to be able to do that. And again, as part of these workflows, you can get input-output with users or APIs. You can have all kinds of logic. You can create menus. You can, as you're building these, you can sort of give them access to all of this data that your enterprise has. We make it really easy to automatically take that data, turn it into vector embeddings, store it in a vector database, and as part of this operation of these AIs, you can query these vector databases to be able to do retrieval augmented generation and things like that. You can call any third-party APIs or write your own custom JavaScript functions that you can run. So lots of power with no code, and then with a little bit of code, maybe help from IT. Again, just regular business users can create really sophisticated applications. And then we provide all of this enterprise stuff that's required, user rights management and logging, archiving, compliance. Coming soon, the ability to take all of this and sort of run AI business intelligence on top of that. And on these conversational assistants that I was mentioning, this ability to create these custom sort of ChatGPT-like assistants for each job function. Because all of that is now running through this enterprise infrastructure, and because you're logging all of that, that becomes all of these data sources for this business intelligence. And you start to realize that your employees, even using AI, are still doing some things manually. And you see this sort of cluster, and you say, oh, we can now take this no-code builder and build another one of these automations or a better assistant for them. So it all continues to evolve. And again, we're seeing a lot of evolution already for people who've transformed their operations with MindStudio, but now are sort of refreshing it again and refreshing it again and doing it. So it's an ongoing process. We are already seeing, with again over 34,000 of these AI applications created, kind of every job function being impacted by this. Sales often takes the lead, obviously because everybody wants more revenue. There you're seeing all kinds of sort of approaches to it at every step of the sales process. So everything from taking a bunch of sort of leads that are being ingested in some way, and then having AI take the first stab at being able to parse those, rank them, classify them, figure out which ones to sort of put in what buckets and what sales people to give them to, and all of that, sort of like lead qualification and cleaning using AI. Then throughout the process, we all see now all of these transcribing agents that are joining all of our video conferences and things like that. Most of that stuff goes into some hole, doesn't provide real value. But now it does, because you can create AIs that watch all of that and start to become a sort of a proactive assistant for salespeople in their communications with prospects. Salespeople often get what's known as happy ears. They're excited to get the sale. They think that the prospect is ready to close, and the AI might tell them the prospect is nowhere near ready to close. They still don't understand this, this, and this. And then, by the way, sort of on the marketing side, the AI can come in and say, I'm going to automatically create custom collaterals for each prospect to fill in the gaps of things that they're still not grokking, and now assist that, right? Also on marketing, you start to see, by the way, I've always really struggled with this, as again, I've now built 3 venture-backed companies, and all of these companies would go through this process of figuring out kind of this ideal customer profile or personas, and all of these things that marketing teams tend to do. And it's always been clear to me that these things are caricatures. There are no such people as these things that we claim of these personas. And of course, that's how we build websites, for these personas with these solution pages. All of that is about to change radically, as content can be generated on the fly for each person, in the sense that's visiting our collaterals, our website. So this on-the-fly generation of custom materials for each individual or enterprise that you're communicating with is a giant unlock for that. And of course, on all of this, obviously, having the AIs do things of like analyzing data and that's sort of spit out of all of these marketing and sales processes, and sort of AI having the time to pay attention and to sort of read between the lines of what's not being said, for example, in email conversations that are going back and forth, the sort of detection of anomalies and deeper insights that humans have no time to do. They could have done it, but ain't nobody got time for that. And so AI can do those things. Again, on every function, I'll stay a little bit more on this. Like, so HR recruiting, obviously doing everything from taking all of these resumes that are coming in and classifying them and sort of figuring out, sort of ranking them, which folks to bubble up to the top. We're seeing a lot of this like training where organizations are creating AI trainers that engage with their employees and do sort of ongoing employee assessment and sort of finding strengths and weaknesses of employees and filling in the weaknesses and providing custom training materials for employees to do that, employee onboarding, lots of applications in HR. It's sort of, again, any of these other functions there too. And all of this is growing really rapidly, and so we're sort of trying to figure out how not to blow up. We're actually a small company for being able to do that, and so we're desperately trying to hire people and document things and scale our training and scale support and all of that. And so I guess the big punchline of all of this is like, if you think about AI, if we rewind like a year ago, my social media feeds were blowing up with like, really smart people that I've known for many years that were making like these bold claims that there was going to be sort of one company left standing. And at that time, that company was clearly going to be OpenAI, and they will get to AGI, and not only will AGI figure out how OpenAI is going to make money, which is what Sam Altman said, is that their business model is we're going to build AGI, and AGI is going to figure out the business model. Right? So there was that. And then there's like all of this argument, because you will get to this AGI, it will know much better than any enterprise could ever know how to run enterprises, and therefore you'll just be able to say to it, build me a multi-trillion-dollar enterprise, go. And it goes and builds this enterprise for you and raises money and does all that. And one of my friends, whose name I won't mention, is a brilliant guy, argued that Tesla was going to be disrupted because OpenAI was going to build cars, because why not? OpenAI is going to know better how to build cars than Elon and team do. I think we've gone, for most people, I think we've gotten past this sort of, I'll call it craziness of believing this. And so I guess my advice to all of you from what we're seeing out there is like, don't wait. Don't wait for GPT-5 or whatever else is coming next. AI has incredible capabilities right now. Technology we have right now at our disposal can dramatically make any enterprise more productive. And so I encourage you to do it now, and then you get flexibility like my friend Sean here with that. Okay, are there any questions that I can answer? I think we still have 4 minutes. Yes. Could you speak up, please?
Do you also have tools that allow for reinforcement learning from the organization itself to be able to improve output of queries against the domain?
We don't in the platform today. So again, even though the domain is MindStudio.ai, and we call ourselves an AI platform. We don't have a single data scientist on staff. We don't build any models. We don't train any models. We're sort of this abstraction layer, right? We're sort of the application layer of AI, sort of abstracting all of the innovation in models, all of the innovation in sort of the underlying infrastructure, and creating a stable base for people to build applications that do that. Anything that has to do with the intelligence layer itself, fine-tuning, reinforcement learning, any of that stuff, is done outside of our platform. Yes?
Do you have any deployments in... This is cool. Do you have any deployments in highly regulated industries like banking, where data protection is, those standards are a lot higher, and how are you, what does the security layer look like?
Yeah. So at this point, we actually don't have any certifications, which we're working on because clearly going to be needed for a lot of industries. But there are already, actually surprising to us, many organizations that have compliance and regulatory requirements that are already using MindStudio, because sort of the value proposition is so compelling to them. So I think for each organization, I think they kind of have to make a decision of like, are we willing to sort of trust this platform that hasn't sort of yet been audited and vetted and have these certifications for doing that. From a security standpoint, we run in modern cloud and follow all the best practices for securing modern cloud. Organizations that are very sensitive about using, for example, these large language models, even though I generally think they should be trusted from these large companies, but they might not trust them, and so they tend to sort of run their own inference on their own models, and then they connect directly to that. So there are ways you can sort of overcome sort of the fear of or the need for compliance by sort of choosing the right way to architect your solutions using MindStudio. But we give you the flexibility to do that. Mm-hmm.
Of the 34,000 different AIs, what are the top use cases, like the top 5 that your clients are coming for?
This is a question I get often, and I always struggle to answer it because I'm not sure. I think it depends on how you sort of choose to rank things. As I showed you recently in that matrix, it's already being used for every job function, sort of imaginable. Sales and marketing, again, just in our experience, tend to be early adopters. And so we're typically found not by sort of the IT group and sort of top down. It typically comes with that somebody in an enterprise discovers this, starts playing around with it, brings it into the enterprise, builds some capabilities, and then other employees see them doing that, and they get trained, and then later, IT or procurement reaches out to us to do that. Yeah, but I think just depends on what part of the organization you sit in, where you'd find value.
That makes a ton of sense. Should I be thinking about this more like an AI IDE where it's a design studio, or is this more like an infrastructure piece, like the new AWS to run my AI apps? How do you monetize it?
Yeah, it's both. It's an IDE, an integrated development environment that allows you to learn to use it and build these things, and then it's also the thing that runs it. And so it's both. We monetize it in the following way. There's a free tier that anyone can start using instantly. We give you some credit for inference and vectorization and querying vector databases and such. And then when you sort of go beyond the threshold, then you have to put in your credit card, and we charge you metered billing for the resources that you use. And there's also a pro tier, which is if you have a team and you want to have a collaborative workspace and be able to create AIs and share them and do that and get better support and things like that. And then coming shortly is an enterprise tier that gives you more of these sort of capabilities that enterprises need, SLAs and and compliance and all of that. It's SaaS, metered SaaS.
Eventually, you need a builder tier. So on a build,
Yes. Yeah, that's, it's funny that you bring that up. Earlier this morning, I was having a meeting specifically about that. In fact, thank you. I meant to mention this. We now have a lot of, I'll call them agencies, that are already using MindStudio and doing work for enterprises or reaching out to us and sort of wanting to now train their agency employees to do this kind of work. And so, yeah, that's coming shortly. There's actually I guess I'm not going to announce it here yet. But soon will be announced a very large company that is, has been using MindStudio for the last few months and have done already a lot of digital transformation. They were an early adopter of AI, so they gave all their employees access to ChatGPT and Midjourney and things like that. They were an early adopter of Copy AI and Jasper, and they've pulled all of that out and replaced all of that with custom-built MindStudio AIs. And so that's great. But perhaps more importantly is last year they served over 2 million SMBs with creative services. So those are their customers. And they are now tooling, sort of tooling up for being able to take MindStudio AIs to these 2 million SMBs is sort of as a new line of business.
spoiler alert, Shopify?
No. No, it's not. Yeah, that would make sense too. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Thank you, great question. So the question is, if now there's a new model comes out, how long does it take, I'm paraphrasing, to get there? About 15 minutes. Seriously, this is a thing, we do this is our fun thing. When new models get announced, 15 minutes later, we announce that we support the models and get people using it. You can find it on my LinkedIn post. By the way, so I'm being told I gotta go. Thank you so much. If any of you wanna find me on LinkedIn, please do, Dmitry Shapiro, and we can continue conversations there. Thank you.